Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Read T-Poss, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called They Speak Madness. The judgment had been made. The jury was unanimous. The human would face our gravest punishment for his abhorrent crimes. The judge, an amalgamation of 5 races' finest AI constructs, decided in favor of our punishment. The human, a specimen midway through a human's remarkably short life, looked paler than usual as the sentence was laid out. He barely resisted, and remained silent as he was brought to the punishment chamber. Those proceeding over the judgment, like myself, were dismissed to be witness to the punishment. I took my seat while the convicted was prepared for his final moments. How could one do something so awful? A teacher, the first human teacher to be employed by the Imperial Academy of Sciences, kill his own students. On his first day, he somehow was able to convince every last one of his students to commit suicide. There was no other explanation. All investigations concluded that the deaths were self-inflicted. Yet to have instigated it, how, was a matter of intense debate. Why, even more so. But to I, as the executioner of justice for this sector, it was my duty to look at what was known. 200 of the Empire's finest young minds driven to suicide after being in contact with him. To me, there was no doubt that he was responsible, even if how was unknown. I would confirm the application of the punishment myself to ensure justice was done. The human was brought into the chamber after being scrubbed, ID'd, and copy of his mind made for the criminal archives. 2 androids knocked the human onto a chair and were moved out of the chamber. The human was kept in a sitting position so that the execution could begin. I winced. To be exposed to such forsaken knowledge rendered one's mind inert. It was a cruel, but fitting for the most horrific of crimes. The human looked around nervously while the system prepared his punishment, compiling thousands of years worth of blood-stained knowledge to be deposited into his skull. With a flash of light, the punishment began. The human writhed on the table. Having experienced a memory implant 1/10 of what he was receiving, I could attest that it was the least pleasant experience of my life. I could hardly fathom the pain such a large memory implant would inflict. A worrying thing happened, though. Or, to be more apt, a worrying lack of something happened. The human remained seated. Surprised, yes. In discomfort, undoubtedly. But infuriatingly, not dead nor frothing at the mouth. The other witnesses were equally confused, so I ordered that he be exposed to it again, just to be safe. The knowledge was pulled out of the human's head and injected back in. This time he was in a great deal of pain, but still somehow not dead, not even convulsing. I had to understand this. I stood up, adjusted my antennas, and entered the airlock between safety and the execution chamber. Inside, the human was humming nervously to himself, unable to look my way. I strode up to him and demanded to know how he had survived. He was confused by this and asked what exactly he was supposed to have survived. Besides from a headache, he hadn't felt anything. Nothing? This was impossible. He didn't have a neural blocker, he wasn't a null, he had taken in the forbidden knowledge and was still both alive and capable of not swallowing his own tongue. How could this be? I asked the human if there was anything he'd learned. He shrugged and said nothing he didn't already know. Oh, my queen. The human already knew about this forbidden knowledge. It all made sense. He had exposed his students to the knowledge to kill them. But how was he alive? Each time I asked a human, he seemed to not understand the nature of my questioning. I became impatient and became blunt. "The universe, you fool!" I shouted. "To know of it is harmless, but to know the true nature of it and our place in it is lethal to all intelligent life. You were plugged full of every blood-soaked piece of knowledge we have of the universe, and you aren't even sobbing and frothing at the mouth." The human looked at me like I only had 2 eyes and said that he knew. He was a scholar of physics amongst his race and studied the universe. My eyes twitched. The human actively studied the universe without ill effect. When asked, the human had no idea what I was going on about. However, as we spoke, I began to understand, and the more I understood, the more terrified I became. They knew. They knew about the universe. They knew their place in it. Knowing any more than that would drive any other race into a suicidal fit, and any more than that would shatter their minds completely. But for humans, it was just another fact. I stepped away from the human as I would from the edge of a cliff. When I discussed this with my superiors, we reopened the case and more became clear. The human had not attempted to kill his students at all. He had done as scholars did and taught his students what he knew. What he knew, however, was something that no other race can survive. Regretfully, our judge deemed the man innocent, sparking intense debate in the Imperial Senate over what to be done with the humans now that we knew that with enough education, any human could kill as many aliens as they could communicate to. It was unpopular, but until we could find a better solution, human territory was quarantined. Only those who could prove that they were uneducated and ignorant to the nature of the universe would be allowed to cross the borders. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.